Thank you. So, by the way, this meeting is being recorded. Okay. So, hi, everybody. And thank you, David. What a lovely thing. I appreciate it very much. And thank you, Karen, for heading this thing up and being patient with me while I tried to get the mic going on my new computer. So, hi, everybody. I am Barclay R. I'm just Barclay. I hardly ever give my last name because it's Randall, and then people spend the rest of the time wondering whether it's Randall Barkley or Barkley Randall. So, hi everybody, I'm Barkley, and I'm an alcoholic. My sobriety date is don't make fun of me. My sobriety date is January 1st of 1990. I used to joke that it was a New Year's resolution gone horribly awry, but that's just not true. It really isn't. It was a New Year's resolution to just quit drinking for a year. If I could just quit drinking for a year, then maybe my wife would leave me alone and I wouldn't be so. I just wanted to, really, I just wanted to sleep because I hadn't slept through the night in years and I just wanted to sleep. Uh, so I wound up in Alcoholics Anonymous. I'll tell you more about that later. Hey, and I'm just going to make sure, Karen, it is 45 minutes. Is that right? Okay. There you go. Okay, so my home group is the Page 112 group here in Nashville. It's actually in a little part of Nashville called Old Hickory Village. I am madly in love with my home group. I really, really am. If you are not doing anything else at 6 o'clock tomorrow night, Central Time, I will put in the Zoom stuff. It's a hybrid meeting. We have a live meeting and a Zoom part of it as well. So in love with my home group. And tomorrow night, Joe C is going to be leading us up. So, boy, howdy. All right. So anyway, hi everybody. Hi. Let me tell. I want to qualify. I come from a family of five people. Okay. And drugs and alcohol have killed three of the five of us. There's only two of us left, and we are both in Alcoholics Anonymous. And I don't think that that's just some kind of weird coincidence. I know beyond knowing that the only reason that I'm sitting here tonight getting to speak to all these great folks from all over the place. Man, ain't Zoom just Zoom Zoom is so cool. It really, really is. The only reason I'm here tonight is because I quit drinking on January 1st, white knuckled it until January 7th, and then I stumbled into an AA meeting on January 7th of 1990, and that's the only reason I'm alive today. I know this beyond knowing. Um, my father was a veterinarian. My father was a veterinarian and named me Barkley. Think about that. And my mom was a brilliant woman. She was the salutatorian of MTSC at the time, and just two very brilliant, very wonderful people. They had three sons, and we just were all alcoholic and drug addicted. Um, that's just the way it was. The first person that alcohol and drugs took from my family was my mother. And I got to tell you the truth, I don't really know why, if it was alcoholism or drug addiction or Al Anonism, honestly, that took my mom. She committed suicide when I was 8. And there was a whole lot of stuff going on around the house, and she was really, really miserable. And I don't know whether it was an accident or what, but she ended up taking a whole lot of Valiums and she died. Um, and there's just some weirdness. I really, really want to stress. I really want to stress that none of the things that happened to me as a kid, none of the things that happen to me now are the reason I'm an alcoholic. The reason I'm an alcoholic is because when I put alcohol or drugs in my system or dog dope, and I can pretty much guarantee I've done more dog dope than anybody in the room. I promise you. Dog dope is just dope that was meant for dogs that I took because my father was a veterinarian. You do what you have access to, okay? I've done more puppy uppers and doggy downers and kitty quaaludes and all this stuff or whatever. I mean, it was just like if it ended in a zine or a dreen, I would just take it. So anyway, the reason I'm an alcoholic is because if I put anything in my system, I developed this phenomenon of craving that makes me want more. And I'm just that way. I've always been that way. When I was 8, I got really drunk for the first time. I am told I drank 3 tall boy Budweisers. I don't really remember. I've always been a blackout drinker, always. Um, I woke up the next morning and had such a hangover that I completely swore off until I was 11. And then when I was 11, I discovered Boone's Farm, Strawberry Hill. Come on, kids, Boone's Farm. Yeah, yeah, there you go. Whoop, whoop, Boone's Farm, baby. For you youngsters, Boone's Farm was called a wine, okay? Although it had never, ever seen a grape before. It was just, it was just sickeningly sweet, and I think it was a little bubbly, maybe I don't know, but man, I took that bottle when I was 11. I took that bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill and I just guzzled it. And I got to tell you, I've never been a dainty little drinker. I drink. And that Boone's Farm went down and hit my stomach and spread all around my body. And I just went, ah. And if you're sitting here tonight, you understand that, um, and suddenly I was okay and you were okay. And 5th grade was okay, you know? It was like I knew all my state capitals, like I was good. I was really, really good. And I'm from this little town outside of Nashville. They call it Mount Juliet. I'm not from Mount Juliet. I'm from Mount Juliet, which is before Mount Juliet became Mount Juliet. It was this little podunk town called Mount Juliet. And I'm not saying that I stumbled all over Mount Juliet as a 11-year-old, 12-year-old, but whenever I could get my hands on anything that would change the way I perceived life, I was all in. I was all in. I When I was 14 is when I discovered in my dad's office. In my dad's office, there was this in his veterinary hospital. There was this room, and it was like I don't know, maybe 10 feet deep and 6 feet wide, and it had this little sign over the door that like those old 1970s faux wood plastic signs with the white engraving, right? And it had one word on it, and it said drugs. And I loved that room. God, how I loved that room. And I fell in love with all the accoutrement that goes with drinking. In my heart of hearts, in my soul, I am an alcoholic. But I loved things that would make it go up and make it go down and make it go and just make it do all the things, you know. I was a big believer in What do you got? Let's do it. What was that? I don't care. I love getting uh outside of myself, changing the way that I feel, because the way that I feel in this moment is just not good. It's just not good. Um, every I'm going to go ahead and tell this story, or I'm going to try and tell it quickly. People like this story. Um, so I waited tables. Okay, this really is in a nutshell. All right, this is my alcoholism in a nutshell, in one story. Okay, I used to wait tables, and I know that many people here probably waited tables because or worked in restaurants because it's a great job for a drunk. You know, you get paid in cash, you get off at 10, you stay up late, you black out, you wake up in the morning, you used to have $200, now you got a couple of crumpled up ones. It was great. It was great. So anyway, one night I'm waiting tables, and it's this place called the Fishery. Okay, the London Fishery. Oh, I saw. Oh, who did I see from up in Toronto? You know, like the London, Ontario. It was based out of there, but it was in Nashville, because when you want seafood, baby, you want Nashville, Tennessee. That's what you want. So I'm sorry. Anyway, so I'm waiting tables one night, and it's a very, very, very slow night. I've only had one table, and they've already gotten their check, and I'm just sitting there. I've been there for a couple hours, nothing. So my manager, Tim, walks up and goes, "Hey, Barclay, we're going to close your station." And I went, "Oh." I have all these voices, and no, they're people. There's like all these people in my brain. One of them is like a middle school girl named Natalie, and all she ever says is, "Nobody likes you. You're stupid, and people know it, and they just don't like you. Like, see all those people right there? Not one of them likes you, right?" And so I just get to say, "Thank you, Natalie. I appreciate it. Please sit down now." And there's a colonel up there, and he's always going, "What's going on around here? Get your poop together, young man." And then there's this dude. There's a puppy in there too. But anyway, there's this dude whose name is Dude. Okay. And Dude, all he ever thinks, he goes, "Ooh, ooh, I got an idea." And Dude has one idea, but he has it all the time. And his idea is, "Let's go get blasted." Right? So Tim says, "Hey, I'm closing your station." And Dude goes, "Ooh, ooh, ooh. Hey, hey, got an idea. Got an idea. Let's go outside. Huh? Huh? We'll smoke a big bowl of dope. Okay. Okay. And then we'll come back in, we'll get the money, and we'll go out drinking." Now, for you youngsters, when I say dope, what I'm talking about is the marijuana. Okay. And I don't, honestly, I really don't know why I smoked marijuana, because you don't know me. I understand that. But believe me when I say I like to talk. Okay. And when I smoke dope, about 90% of the time, I get really paranoid, right? And so I would sit there, and people would come up and talk to me, and I would go, and remember this fun part of getting high? Remember your teeth, your lips stick into your teeth and stuff. It was just, it was. So I only smoked pot for like 15 years. So anyway, so I go outside and I smoke this big bowl of dope, and I go, "All right, time to go, time to go in and get my money and go drinking." Right. So I go inside, and what had happened is, while I was out smoking that big bowl of dope, we'd had a little rush, and those people were still there, and they had opened my station and resat me. Okay, reseated me, I don't know. Anyway, they gave me another table, and there was this guy, and he had on this big leisure suit. Remember leisure suits, right? Remember leisure? This is like in the 80s. The guy had on a leisure suit. his wife had this giant hair, this like jacket to Jesus hair. That's what we call it down here in Nashville. I don't know what you call it up there, but she had this giant 60s jacket to Jesus hair. And I just go, take my lip off my teeth. I go, good evening. I'm Barclay, and I'll be your waiter this evening. May I take your drink order? So she gives me her drink order, and I go, oh, very, very good, very good. And I'm turning to dude to take his drink order, and I notice out of the corner of my eye, she has pulled out a cigarette. Do you remember the 80s? Do you remember when you could just smoke anywhere? It was such a magical time for I loved smoking, and you could smoke in restaurants, you could smoke in bars, you could smoke in church, you could just smoke all over the place. It was you could just smoke, man. So anyway, she pulls out a cigarette, and I know how to make money, and I need money to go drinking. So I reach my pocket and I go, click. And what I had forgotten when I went outside to smoke that big bowl of dope was that I had turned up my lighter to about that big. Do you remember those old Bic lighters that you could just turn that wheel and it would go like, like it was like you could weld with it. It was like just butane for about that much, and then the flame would start. Flame would start. So, so I click, and it goes, whoo! And she must have had on like 2 cans of Aquanet or something because her hair just went, oh, it just went, and like everything goes into slow motion, right? And I'm going, no. And she's going, no. And we're just beating her out, and we're beating her out. Well, we finally get her beat out, right? And she's just she's like sitting there going, with like this little tendril of smoke coming up out of her head. And like all this hair back here, all this hair is still there, right? But all this hair is just gone. It's gone. It's gone, right? That'll straighten you right up. Um, and well, they got their meal comped. Okay, they got their meal comped, and I don't think that her husband really liked her hair that much because he gave me a huge tip. I mean, a huge huge tip. And I tell that reason, I tell that story for a couple of reasons. Okay, one is because you guys really are very sick and you love that story. You love that. It's really weird. It's like I have told that story to like regular people, and they go, you what? He set her on fire. You set her on fire? It's like I was well, y'all know where to laugh. Regular people don't know where to laugh. I have to admit. Um you know what? I uh I don't know why, but I haven't talked about this in a long time, but I uh I was speaking one time down in Baton Rouge, and this woman asked, she said, "What did you ever do to make amends to that woman that you set on fire?" And I went, "Oh, that's a really good question," which is what you say when you don't know, right? Because I got to tell you, I mean, I couldn't have picked her out of a lineup of women with her hair on fire. And anyway, okay, good. So I prayed about it because I didn't know, and I don't know that I would ever be able to find her, but I prayed about it, and what came to me was, and what I truly believe is from God. I try not to set people on fire, right? I mean, physically, literally, but also like spiritually. What I try to do is not set people on fire. which takes me to the second reason that I tell this story is because I it is a perfect snapshot of Barclay in untreated alcoholism. Whether I'm drinking or not, I walk through life, right, in untreated alcoholism when I'm not paying attention to, and I'm self absorbed and I'm selfish and self centered. And it's just, and I walk through life and I bash into you and I set you on fire, right? I do some stupid thing and I set you on fire. And we both go, oh my God, oh my God. And I go, I'm so sorry. Oh God, I'm sorry. And I'm not lying. I really am. I got to tell you, when I got here, every other danged sentence that I said was I'm sorry. I got so sick of saying I'm sorry, and people got so sick of me saying I'm sorry. And then you do going about my merry way and doing the same thing over and over and over again. Just the same stupid crap, right? So and that's when it was working, right? That's when drinking was working. I would literally set people on fire. Um, and that I really want to get to. Okay, cool. I want to get sober because that's where the majority of my life has been. I got sober when I was 29. I'm 65 now. The majority of my life has been living in sobriety. And I have certainly burned my life to the ground, stone cold sober, not even thinking about a drink. I have this thing about fire, right? I've had really amazing uh, parts of my journey. I've had really not so great parts of my journey. Um, and that's really more kind of what I'd like to talk about. So, at the end of my drinking, what ended up happening was, is I when I was so my mom died when I was a kid. My brother, who named Tim, was a good guy, but um, he'd gotten this new car, and he was on his way home from a bar, and he was doing Valiums, and he passed out drinking and doing Valiums, and he passed out, and he hit a tree, and it burst into flames, and he died. And then within a year of that, my father basically drank himself to death. I mean, it seemed like he was old at the time. He was like 60. He was like 60 when he drank himself to death. And when we went and there's a reason I'm telling you this, I promise, stay with me, okay? When we went to the lawyer for the reading of his will, what we found out was that after my mom had died, he had he had married this other woman, which he had married this other woman. And when I was the youngest of the kids, and when I graduated, he left her and he went and married another woman, and he left her and was living with another woman after he left his third wife. And what we found out was that um, he had left all his money, and he was a successful guy. He had left all his money to his third wife, who he had already left. And my oldest brother and my middle brother's kids and I literally split the money that he had on him when he died. Okay. And if you're looking for a recipe for resentment, I there's one there. Okay. Um, and that happened when I was 26 years old. And from the time that was in October of 86, I got sober in January of 90. And for those 3+ years, here was my life. Here was my life. I would come to in the morning. I would try and figure out why my wife was mad at me. I'd try and figure out what side of the argument I was on. I would go to this this stupid job that I hated, in my beat up truck that I hated. And I would work all day. And then on the way home, I would stop and I would put on a credit card, a 12 pack of Budweiser, and I would steal a bottle of NyQuil and I would just drink until I passed out. And if I couldn't drink and if I couldn't pass out, I'd go get more, go put more on a credit card. And then when I passed out, I would every single morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, every morning at 3 o'clock in the morning, you could set your clock to it. I would wake up not angry. I would wake up in a rage. Drinking wasn't any fun anymore. It was a means of making me go to sleep. It was, and I mean, it's every now and then I'd have some fun, every now and then. But basically, I would just sit on the couch and drink until I passed out, wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, drink until I passed back out. If I couldn't drink myself back to sleep, by 5, I would switch over to coffee and, go into work. And I went to work drunk a lot, you know, and that was my life. That was my life. I got ulcers. I hated. And what had started out truly, truly, I used to have such fun drinking. I was a great backseat, partier or a great co-pilot. I was willing to turn my will and my life over to whoever had the keys. And it just, by the time it was over with, it just wasn't fun anymore. It was not fun anymore. So my now ex-wife at the time, my wife at the time said, "Why don't you?" So on December 31st, I think I'd gone through a 12 pack. I went out and got one more Dos Equis, and I signed this thing that said I'm going to quit drinking beer for a year, and I quit for a week. And in that week, I tore a door off its hinges in my house. I'm not a violent guy, but I was that week. And I beat a phone to death because some bill didn't get paid. Remember when phones were like on the wall? They had the cords and stuff. Um, and finally, I was beat, man. And my wife said, "Why don't you go to one of those AA meetings?" And I said, "Why don't you find one for me?" Right? And I went to this meeting, and there were all these people there that were, first off, I thought I had problems. You guys are nuts. I forgot that I used to crush up and snort dog dope, right? I forgot all about that. But what I heard, the thing that I heard, the music of what I heard was the laughter. And I knew that you weren't just faking it. I still laugh, you know, and but there was something about your laughter that made me keep coming back. Did I really want what you had? I don't think so. I don't know. But man, your laughter hooked me. It really hooked me. There's a whole lot. I can't go into the whole deal. Anyway, I was willing to go to many lengths. I did, those first 3 steps were pretty easy. And then I was even did 4 and I did 5 and I did 6 and 7, even though it was only like a paragraph and whatever, okay. And I did 8 and I did 9 and I did 9. I did 9, damn it. I did 9. I even did 9 with that woman that wheedled her way into my dad's will and took all my money. All my money. We're talking millions of dollars, okay? All my money. Sorry, that was for effect. You'll find out that I don't really mean all that anymore. Um, but and so I did that, and I think I'm going to, yeah, I'm going to walk down this. I'm going to walk down this and come to the end of this story, and then I'll come back for some other stuff because I really want to make sure that I get through this part of it. This is such a huge part of the miracle of my life, of our lives, of this program. Holy moly! So I got a sponsor maybe 2 weeks in. I went through these steps. I did. The best that I could come up with for this woman was, her name was Billy, right? And I called up Billy, and the best that I could come up with was, I when Dad died, I was not very kind to you. And I wasn't, because we tried to sue her to get some of the money back, but the laws, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I was unkind to you, and I would like to know what I can do to make it right. And she said, never contact me again, ever. And I would like to say, and I went, okay, and I've been fine ever since, but that is not that is not what happened. Okay. So I went, okay, but I knew that I had done what I was supposed to do. I knew that I'd done the thing that you asked me to do. And there was some little bit of relief, I have to admit, because the whole time I was growing up, um, we were pretty nuts, the family was pretty nuts. But the one thing we had is we had money. And throughout my entire life and well into my sobriety, I confuse money with God a lot, a lot. And I have nothing against money, and I have nothing against good jobs, and I have nothing against, I there's it is not a bad thing, but I do know one thing. It makes a terrible God. And I devoted my life to it. I really did. Um, so anyway, so I kept, I kept going through the steps, and maybe I think it was 5 years. Here's what ended up happening is, in my drive to get money. When I first got sober, it talks about it in the book, I turned my attention to getting my financial affairs in order. And I was successful, and I ended up with this really good job that I really did. I loved this job. But what ended up happening is I devoted myself to this job to the exclusion of everything else. And it was a kind of a job where people literally applauded me, and that's not good for my ego. And I fell in love with my ego. I fell in love with what I could accomplish through this job. And I was making more money than I'd ever made. And people were talking about, oh my God, we need to take you to, this this place to blah blah blah. And I ended up burning my life to the ground. I started getting away from alcoholics, and this is like at 7, 8, 9 years, guys. So if you got 7, 8, 9 years, I see this a lot. I see it a lot, and it certainly happened to me. I burned my life to the ground completely by the time I was 9 years sober, and my marriage ended up in the long run failing, and my kids, wouldn't talk to me, and I never even thought about drinking. Not once did I think about drinking. I thought about maybe taking myself out, but I have a thing about suicide. But if you wanted to push me in front of a bus, that would have been okay. Anyway, so I got to a point where I just kind of burned it all down to the ground, and I called up this guy, Scott L. I said, Scott, I think I need to do a fourth step. And he said, I don't know how to do that. I went, what are you talking about? You're Scott L. You're like Mr. Fourth Step, right? And And he said, I don't really know how to do just a 4-step. The only thing I know how to do is start at the beginning and work all the way through. So we started working together, and he became my sponsor and has for decades now. So anyway, I got back into the deal, and I got to a point. I'm making the 4-step, and I've gone through my my lineage has a way of doing the 4th step out of the book. There's column 1, you do column 1, you finish that, you go down, you do column 2, you finish that, you go down and do column 3, write a name, skip a line, write a name, skip a line. Then between column 3 and column 4, there is a series of prayers and observations and all this stuff that really kind of pulls the poison out of me. And I had a lot of poison in me, a lot of poison in me. So I did it this way, and I continued to do it through there, and I've got more and more relief. And so I'm maybe the 4th or 5th time I'd gone through the steps. I was going through column 1, and I got to the end of the page, and I realized I had not even thought about Billy, which was huge. It was huge. I went, wow, that's progress, man. And then I have to admit, maybe I'm 35 years sober now. I'm thinking maybe 10 years ago, I'm going through the steps, and I realized, I don't know if you don't know um, Don Major from Louisville. He's passed away last year. Amazing. Please get his tapes or whatever they're called now. Um, and he talks about realizing it becomes real in me. It becomes a reality in my heart. And I realized that had it not been for what had happened, um, with the money and with all that stuff, I never would have gotten to AA. I never would have gotten here, because really what I wanted to do is I just wanted to sleep, man. I just wanted to sleep. And um, I couldn't. I just couldn't do it. So now then I went, okay, cool. All right, cool, cool, cool. And then I've continued working through, and about 3 years ago, 4 years ago, I realized through this step work, I told you about my brother Tim. He had this new badass car, and he was driving his badass car. Well, what had happened is he was going to UT up in East Tennessee, and he was walking to school, and a car ran a red light or something and hit him, and it broke both of his legs, and it broke his arm, and he was in the hospital for a while, and he ended up getting this settlement, and he got 42 grand. Okay. And he went out and he got that, like a 280Z, right? And he got like a part of the house, and he got a bad mamma jamma audio system, and he got an ounce of cocaine, because duh, right? Right. And and within 2 months of getting that money, he was dead. He was doing all the coke. He was doing that cocaine. And I did a bunch of that stuff with him, and uh, he was trying to come down off of that and doing Valiums, and he wrecked and he died. And in going through these steps again, I realized that, if I had gotten $1 million at the age of 26 years old, I know in my heart of hearts, I would not be here. I would not be here, because the kind of alcoholic that I come from is we look fine. We look just fine up until the moment we die. Mom looked fine. She was dead. Tim looked fine. He was dead. And I know that I would not have survived getting that amount of money at that age. I would not have. So literally, I've gone from this is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. And if this happened to you, you'd be pissed off too. And I could convince you how awful my life was and how awful these people had been to me. And I was the victim, and I was the victim, and I was the victim, right? And to go from that to seeing it as I literally owe them my life. I'm alive today because of that. If that's not a spiritual awakening, I really don't, I haven't seen one. That's the closest I have to a huge and a spectacular upheaval. um, And then just literally a couple of weeks ago, I was at my home group, page 112. I'll put the Zoom up on the thing, the chat. I was at my home group, and a great grand sponsee or something of mine was leading the meeting, and he was talking about resentments. And he had something that when he was a kid, he had something happen to him that should never happen to anybody, and it should never happen. And it happened to him, and it happened to him repeatedly, and it happened to him over a number of years. And he was talking about his journey in trying to get beyond this resentment that he had. And he said, where my mistake was, because there's stuff that happens to us that we just had no part in. I had no part in my mom's suicide. I didn't. What I'll do that some other day. Um, but he had no part in this. But what he was able to come to was what he had done with it. And what he had done with it is he had refused to go to church, which is where the abuse came from. And he would not take his wife, he would not take his kids, and he had deprived his children of a possible means of having a spiritual way of living. And it really struck me. It hit me. I realized just a couple of weeks ago, sometimes quickly, sometimes slowly, right? That I deprived my kids of having a father because I was out there, and it's been due to this resentment, right? I resented not getting that money, and by God, I was going to go out and make that money because that will fix me. And I completely deprived my own flesh and blood of having a father. And I was, my none of my kids have any memory of me drinking. My oldest was 3 when I got sober, but my alcoholism uh continued to damage them. I have very happily, I mean, 2 of my 3 kids would not talk to me for years. And I've worked through the steps, and I've worked with a number of you guys on how to. I'm not a big fan of saying living amends. I don't, but how to behave in a manner that is spiritual. I just want to be a good dad, right? And it took years of doing stuff, and I'm happy to stick around and tell you what I did and all that stuff. I Mainly what I did is work the steps on it with people. um, and today I really do, I have a very good relationship with all of my kids. My marriage never didn't make it. My ex-wife still doesn't really want to have much to do with me. I've done what I could do. I've done what I could do. My kids and I get along famously. We have an ongoing text thread because if you want to talk to your kids, you got to text. um, and I see them regularly. And this thing really has done uh, this thing. this miraculous, wonderful fellowship has taken me from this angry, bitter guy, who just was the ultimate victim. And and it has given me a way of life. I have this life that I love madly, and I have friends that I love madly. And as I was talking to I hate calling them normies or whatever, but I was talking to a person that's, out there in the world. They're saying, man, you know what? You're lucky if you can count on one hand the number of people that you can just absolutely count on no matter what happens. And I got to say, that's just not my experience. I have more friends than I've got hundreds. It's crazy to think about. I've got hundreds of friends that I could call in the middle of the night and they would drop everything and to help me. And I would do the same thing for them. What a beautiful life we have been given. What an amazing life we have been given. Um, I love Alcoholics Anonymous. I love Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love you. And I think my 45 minutes are up. Ba-dum, bum, ba-dum, bum. Hey!